Welcome to this episode of Season 5 of The Common Bridge, where policy and current events are discussed in a fiercely nonpartisan manner. The host, Richard Helppie, is a philanthropist, entrepreneur, and political analyst who has reached over 4 million listeners, viewers, and readers around the world. With our surging growth in audience and subscriptions, The Common Bridge continues to expand its reach. The show is available on the Substack website and the Substack app. Simply search for The Common Bridge. You can also find us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. The Common Bridge draws guests and audiences from across the political spectrum, and we invite you to become a free or paid subscriber on your favorite medium.
And welcome to The Common Bridge. I'm your producer, Brian Kruger, and we get to do this about 4 times a year, and I love it. Rich, welcome to your own show. We've got a viewer mailbag today. Are you ready to go again?
We're both going to find out together.
So somebody wrote in after the last one that we did that says, you guys calling it a mailbag cracks me up because it makes you both boomers because nobody does mail anymore. And I will say this.
I mean, what else could we call it? Call it an inbox, I guess, right?
That's right. Because nothing really does come in the mail. But this time, too, we're going to leave out a few things. I'm going to take this from our Substack, from our podcast. I've got a few from Facebook. I got a few from X. I'm not going to say where they came from because I think it'll isolate the person too much, but I am going to give names because they put their names on the question. So
we got a lot of email too, Brian.
Oh yeah.
We got a lot of emails and DMs and that type of thing too.
I think the last 6 of these are all email. So,
okay.
All right. Well, this will be fun. How about we get started?
All right.
And this is kind of, this is Emma Hartley. Emma Hartley asks that she says that it looks like we're coming to the end of the 5th season. She's loved all of them. She picked us up in the 2nd season and went back and reviewed the 1st season. Loves the show. She just wants to know, what are your reflections after doing about 252 or 3 episodes over the last 5 years, and what have you seen and such?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good things in the country. And, if we didn't have this established media infrastructure and people weren't on their phones and computers and shows like this so often, they'd probably know that as well. And, when I was starting this, I said, well, if we get policy out there, then people will talk about policy, and then we'll have discussions around policy. And some of that occurred, but also, the discovery or maybe the illumination of 3 villains. So it's the Republican Party, it's the Democratic Party, and it is also that established legacy news media. That really is the linchpin, because when you think about it, if you're a political party and you're fighting for power or survival, it kind of explains some of the underhanded stuff. I'm not condoning it, that you see both the Republicans and Democrats doing. All right. But if you left in the check of an honest media, they couldn't do it. And now we know that they've effectively become stenographers for the party in power, and they react as if they're afraid of the party in power. And maybe we'll get to be talking a little bit about Mark Zuckerberg. So, I've always been a bit of a contrarian. I'm a problem solver. I'm fiercely independent. And I try not to regurgitate the stuff from the media complex. And it's kind of weird because the people on the left assume I'm pro-Trump. I'm not. But the thing is, the established media has so much negative on Trump, and they're relentless, and they've been at it. Cheryl Atkinson is a great writer, really highlighted that in a piece today. But the contrarian is going to sound positive. And similarly, that there's so much cheerleading and cover up, frankly, around the Democrats and the left, that it's going to sound like you're hypercritical of them. I wish they both could do a good job. And if we had a better media infrastructure, then I think they would.
Fair
What was
enough.
the question? I forgot where I was going on this.
That's
All right,
always the trick. That's the
what-
trick with these, Rich. All right. Noah didn't give a last name. Asks simply, do you think democracy is at risk?
I think that's a talking point, frankly. And so, but I do think it's at risk, but probably not at the way it was been portrayed. Um, as you know, I'm an avid reader and I'm a pattern recognizer. And I note that the insurrectionist thing has dropped. You don't hear that word very often. And my guess, I don't know, this is speculation, that it's just not polling well. And the fact of the matter is, no matter what happened at the end of the first Trump term, or the only Trump term, or whatever it turns out to be, that we did have a transfer of power. The observable fact is that Trump did nothing for 187 minutes. An observable fact is that Trump did not welcome the incoming president to the White House. And an observable fact is that Donald Trump has never actually conceded the election. So is that a danger to democracy, or is that just Trump being Trump? I mean, you make the call. On the other hand, the Democrats have waged lawfare vigorously. And Andrew Cuomo called him out, said, look, these cases would not be brought if it wasn't against Donald Trump, and it wouldn't have been brought against Trump if he wasn't running for office. I don't know how you define it any more clearly. Yesterday, although the New York Times, as of last night, had not covered this story, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook said the Biden administration told us to censor stories about COVID they didn't like and about Hunter Biden's laptop and where it might lead. And he expresses remorse for that. So censorship is a bad thing. The Biden administration has been having air marshals trail Tulsi Gabbard around as somehow a threat. And I'm more concerned about the people doing that. They've got a candidate now they claim about democracy, a candidate that has not received a single vote for a single delegate by a single member of the public. So, RFK Jr. comes out, and maybe we'll get to talk about that a little bit today. And I took note, nobody's slamming the content of what he had to say about the party that he literally grew up in. Yeah. And so, do the Republicans have a loose cannon they can't control at the top of their ticket? And it looks like the Democrats have this organized program of trying to thwart democracy. Now, can one counterbalance the other? We don't know. But if we had a better media like what we're seeing on Substack, then I think we have a fighting chance. Who knows? People are pretty brainwashed at this point.
Yeah. I thought this was really good. This just came in this morning from Benjamin Carr, and it came in on Substack. He said, and I didn't fact check this, but I think he's right. I'm kind of doing it in my head. He said that if you take Biden, Harris, and Walz together, their entire age, it's 200 years. And in those 200 years of all those three together, none of them have worked in the private sector ever.
Yeah.
And none of them has signed a paycheck, and none of them have been a business person. Now, what Benjamin is asking is he knows through watching and reading and looking at your writings and everything, he knows that you're a businessman and you've signed a lot of checks over the years. Do you think it's important for the president of the United States, how's he put it, who's going to be the CEO of the largest company in the world, to be a businessman or have some sort of business person background?
So first of all, not necessarily a business background, but some familiarity about how the economy actually works. We can go back to John Boehner's story about growing up in his father's bar and watching a small business person struggle. I think it would be good if they had some private sector experience. and at least not be hostile to the private sector. And let me tell you the issue that I've experienced in my own life. People that have only been in academia or only been in government in the public sector, they look at what exists today and assume that's always been there. Hey, and they assume it's static. Hey, if people are making this much money, we tax them, we get this much. They don't understand human behavior, that changes in policy change behavior. All right. And go back to the Reagan years. Reagan indexed the tax brackets to inflation. He removed a lot of the lower tax brackets entirely. He simplified it, and receipts into the federal government skyrocketed because people took that money and put it back to work. It's got to go someplace versus being sucked into the vortex of the federal spending. So I think people having an understanding. Oh, but the other thing I want to mention too is that more people moved from the middle class to the upper middle class under Reagan than moved from the middle class down. And so when they say, oh, the rich got richer, it's like, no. It's different people seized the opportunity based on the incentives. And that's what a lot of the policy work for people that have never been exposed to the private sector seem to miss. And my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. Okay. Evelyn Granger asks, what do you think about a Kamala Harris for presidency? What do you think about that?
Well, first, I think you should learn how to pronounce Kamala.
I'm going to get fried.
And so, look, I actually wrote a column called Kamala Harris for President. It really spoke more to the campaign strategy, if people want to talk about that, than it did to the presidency. But if you look, you've got 2 Kamala Harrises. You've got her track record from decades in the public sector, and you've got a 42-minute speech at the convention. I tend to think the DEI, left coast liberalism, soft on crime calamities that really were the hallmark of what she's done, and the ineptness around the border and such, probably would you'd think that would be the thing to expect going forward. Her speech that she gave at the convention, really, it was George Bush's acceptance speech in content. And no one batted an eye that she'd completely gone 180 degrees. But that's pandering to get elected. So what do I think a administration would look like? I think there would be a fairly abrupt shift to the left. Particularly if the Congress coming in is Democratic controlled in both houses. That would be my guess, and that's who she owes, and that's who's going to get rewarded.
Okay, Grace Bishop, and she comes out of Substack, and to me, and there's nothing wrong with this, but she seems to be a Harris supporter. But she says Harris is now up in the polls. What are your thoughts about that swing and how she is now up in the polls, according to Grace?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, it's not surprising that we came into this. 70% of the voters consistently said, we do not want Donald Trump. We don't want Joe Biden. And Harris is not Biden and is not Trump. And if I'd encourage people to go back and read the column I wrote on the 4th of July called Kamala Harris for President. That followed the one I wrote the week before that said a throat lodging is what was between Joe Biden and a great debate performance. But Harris, what I recommend is you keep the focus entirely on Trump and entirely on observable facts. Okay. And she started off in that speech with the lies that have been debunked. Okay. So that was the first time she'd gone off course. And then trying to recreate her as the second coming of FDR and Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King all at the same time is idiotic on the part of the Democrats. They should just be on message saying, you wanted someone other than Trump or Biden. We've got that. Take a chance on us. And she's saying the right things about, I want to be everybody's president. But I mean, she could win the presidency. I think it'll be a dogfight. They have clearly the media on their side. There's some allegations that the polling is oversampling Democrats. We don't know. We don't know the status of some of the voting laws that, require ID versus just let the ballots get shot out there. So there's a lot of moving parts here.
Okay. Lucas Ramsey asks if Richard Helppie got to be the chairman of the Harris campaign, what would you advise her and that campaign to do from here until election day to assure that they win this, going on the momentum that they have right now?
I would strongly suggest humility. And I would say, look, we're not perfect. We want to guide the country out of the generational conundrum of a Trump Biden. We're halfway there. Our geriatric, cognitively deficient president is not going to be in this. You've got another one over there. We're not going to get into what he says. We're not going to get into what he does. We're not going to react to his name calling and all that. All we're saying is that we're going to be an alternative, and we welcome everybody, and we're going to try to listen. This where they're screwing up is these false joy this and joy that. I mean, come on. and still, and I haven't looked in a few days, but they still have put no policies on their website. Zero.
Yeah, I guess maybe that changes tomorrow with that first kind of a softball interview, it looks like. But I'm going to set this up so we have some parallel structure with this. What about a Donald Trump presidency? And can you finish that off? And actually, James Porter said this, kind of what Lucas was saying. What does Donald Trump do from here until election day to win this? So I guess that's a combined question. I'm kind of throwing my own out there, but I'm ending up with this other. So
okay, look, in a normal world, Trump should be down 20 points. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, because people don't like lawfare, they don't like inflation, they don't like the open borders, they don't like censorship, they don't like war. So that's what's keeping Trump in the game. It wouldn't really matter what you advise the Trump campaign to do because Trump's not controllable. And his greatest weakness is that he does things by the seat of his pants. This juvenile name calling, self-centeredness, McTweeter, well, okay. So he had a better track record and more popular policies than the party in power. But the exaggerations, the distortions, the idiotic statements are just exhausting. And the stuff that he has to deal with from the media makes him sympathetic. And, if I was Trump, if Trump would listen, I would say, look, I went from an A-lister celebrity at the Clinton weddings on Oprah. People came to see me to somehow I'm a pariah. Okay. Hey, I'm not the caricature that you've made me out to be. And Kamala Harris isn't the avatar that she's made out to be. And look, all kidding aside, here's the policies that we're going to put forward that we think Americans like. And better border control, inflation by getting the price of energy down, which energy shows up every place in the economy, and so forth. So that's where I'd leave it.
Okay. I think you're going to like this question. I think he's being tongue in cheek, but I kind of get it. It's from Daniel Monroe, and it's got to be tongue in cheek, but it's fun. He says, in my club, we laugh, and this is in my club, we laugh about the money that we got during COVID, and everybody got it. We all didn't spend it, we invested it. Do you think that had an impact on where the stock market has gone since then?
Maybe. But the short answer is this: when you flood that much liquidity into the economy, it goes someplace, right? And it's too many dollars chasing too few goods. That's why you have inflation for the essentials, shelter, food, fuel. But it also sloshes into assets. So real estate, stock market, etc. It's not that the companies are worth more. It's just the dollars are worth less. So
yeah,
it goes
well,
up.
This kind of mashes into what Julian Marsh says, and this is from email. Wait, am I going to see? Because they use sometimes people type with numbers instead of okay. All right. Said the stock market is up. Do you think this is Bidenomics? I guess it feeds into your last answer. Why do you think the stock market is up so high?
A couple things. First of all, we're at the forefront of a technological change, and you can go back to the history of capitalism. Every time there's a technological change, there is a furious amount of investment before it settles down to a handful of companies. Okay, just think about automotive companies in the early 1900s. There were dozens of them, and now we're down to a handful. More recent times, we had lots of companies doing search engines, Ask Jeeves, and so forth.
Yeah.
And now we're down to a couple. So now we're at the threshold of AI. There's a lot of money flowing into AI, and it's going to come down to a few winners. And by the way, the other interesting place, I've been doing some backgrounding on the legal marijuana business. It's the same thing. There's going to be a few really big winners, and there's going to be a lot of money lost. And so that money's fueling the stock market right now. And, it'll settle out. This is one of the beauties of capitalism is that, that creative destruction. So.
Yeah, I get you. Let's see. What do we have next here? From Olivia Jennings, who lives in Pennsylvania. She wants to know what are your thoughts about the assassination attempt, and her question: do you think it left the media's story mill too quickly? I guess she calls it the media story mill. I think she's asking why we don't talk about it anymore.
That's a great question. Why don't we talk about it? I was had the TV on with the sound off last night, and there was J.D. Vance was giving a talk, and he's surrounded by 6 feet tall bulletproof glass. And I thought, that separates him from the people he's trying to speak with, which was a little disturbing. Let me start at the end. I think that the assassination follow-up cost Joe Biden the presidency because up until that time, the negative ads and the viciousness and the vile things being said, that was the whole DNC playbook. And then after the attempted assassination, Biden said, stop all that. And then he gets on national television and he calls Donald Trump Donald when he called him on the phone. And I'm like, well, he just humanized him. And, within days, Joe's gone. But look, I think we need to listen to investigative reporters. And it's interesting to me. I guess, I'm a data-driven person. And I'm just what are the odds? All these things had to happen. A 20-year-old with virtually no social media footprint figures out where to shoot from. Okay. And and it figures out, hey, that's the optimum roof. And that just happens to be the one that doesn't have any security on it. What are the odds that he could get a ladder and a rifle into the situation without being stopped? What are the odds that no law enforcement reacted to the sightings of the guy on the roof and the calls from the crowd to apprehend him? And what are the odds that the site of the shooter's death was cleaned up faster than the Lincoln limousine that John Kennedy rode in? Okay. And what are the odds that a shifting story of a too steep roof or local law enforcement didn't cover, or a guy was locked out of the building who was supposed to cover it at just the critical time? I look at this and go, statistically, that is just really amazing. And if you really want to get into the weeds on this, CNN's there filming live. You know, they're the same group that happened to be there when Roger Stone was getting arrested. And there's a guy from the New York Times shooting at a shutter speed that is designed to capture things moving in at a very high rate of speed. I talked to a number of photographer friends. When would you set your shutter to 8,000 feet per second? And the answer, one guy who regularly photographs NASCAR and other car races, says he's at 2,500 frames per second. So you look at all that and you go, okay, what went on here? It's a mystery. And the last thing I'll say is like about the shot itself. And I think I may have said this on an earlier time we talked about this. That's not that hard of a shot. You could make that shot with iron sights. Okay, it's just amazing.
So you think there's something else there. And the reason I follow up on this is, Rich, you've gotten over 130 different emails and messages and Substack comments about this particular thing. And one of them said something I thought was really interesting. We had a president who was actually shot in the head only a couple of months ago. And we're not talking about it anymore. We've been talking about the Kennedy assassination for 60 some years and breaking it down so far. And we had cameras all over that thing, and the media is not talking about it anymore.
Yeah, from a media standpoint, it's very, very curious. And again, that comes back to my opening remarks. If we had a honest legacy media, notice that I am not drawing conclusions. I'm looking at observable facts that nobody disputes. Right. No. As of this point, that, where that roof was, it wasn't covered. A 20-year-old guy with no military background figures out how to get in there and so forth. And you'd think people would be mildly curious about how all that came to be. OK, that's to me the biggest thing. But I tell you what, I talked to a person who good friend of mine, known for many years, who's very emotional, said she hates Trump, hates him. She goes, I don't hate anybody, but I hate him. and she says, like, did he actually ever get hit in the ear with a bullet? And I'm like, or was it a fragment? I'm like, well, what difference does it really make? And I explained to her what the size of that actual round could be. Now, they haven't said if it's a .223 or a .556 type of AR. But a .223, hitting something like an ear cartilage wouldn't leave a big gap. It would be a pass through or clip it. That bullet is designed to go slow, impact, and then move around inside the body to create wound channels. Okay, that's probably more than people wanted to hear about on this. But in answer to your question, I don't know why the media is not more curious. Had Joe Biden been shot at, he'd be a near martyr at this point. So who knows?
Yeah. Okay. This is from Ava Caldwell. And she says, from a production standpoint or just pure television, I love that. What are your thoughts about both the DNC and RNC conventions? And Rich, I'll add on to this. You and I, without telling our ages, we can remember the Chicago televised convention and what they all look like prior to this. What are your thoughts about what you saw in the last couple of months with RNC and DNC?
Well, I'm glad that the question was about the television, because that's really what we're talking about here. and that they're not the conventions that actually decided the candidate. And why the Democrats wanted to do a roll call was, that's complete theater. So I would say this: neither the RNC or the DNC was for thinking people. The Republicans were doing pretty good job until they brought out Hulk Hogan. And no, come on. These are the same people that brought an empty chair in Clint Eastwood when they had a candidate like Mitt Romney. And really? With the country beat it in, you wanted Hulk Hogan ripping off his shirt to show that you're serious about leading the world for the next 4 years. Trump's speech was good, charitably good, I'll say, or comparatively good for about 20 minutes. And then it became the same old Trump. Okay. Same old lamentations. The DNC, it was for the bipolar. Okay. We can't wait to throw the bums out for all the problems and bring in the joy of a new candidate. And it's like, hello, they're the same people. And they can't help but put in the lies to feed their base. But I will say this: the Democrats rehearse their speeches, and they stick to the script. Okay, and Trump, of course, does neither. Okay, he does not look like a guy that prepares. And if he is preparing, he's worse executive than I even have criticized him to be.
Okay, this one sounds like it comes from a school teacher. This is from Ella P. Didn't put her last name. Compare and contrast the vice president choices of both the Republicans and the Democrats.
Okay, well, so first of all, I don't think either one is a real bad choice. Okay, and arguably, could there have been better choices? So, by way of example, had Donald Trump and Nikki Haley kissed and made up, it would have iced the election in their behalf. But again, Trump being Trump, why did he pick J.D. Vance? Because he likes me, is what Trump said about Vance. And I will say I didn't know anything about Vance, so I listened to his book, which he did in his own voice. And frankly, I can relate. There are a lot of people that I went to school with in, blue collar Detroit that came up from the South, and I saw the culture firsthand. And J.D. Vance got a compelling personal story, no matter how you cut it. He's very excellent on his feet, and I think he was brought in to give Trump a fighting chance where he needs it. Pennsylvania, possibly Virginia, possibly Michigan. And so I think from a campaign perspective, Vance, is probably okay because it's going to be the Trump show over on that side. Mm-hmm. And for the Democrats, look, I think Gretchen Whitmer would have been a much better choice. She's clearly getting ready to run. She's looks good. She's got less of a COVID policy overhang than Walz, and her city's fared far better than Minneapolis. And having two women on the ticket, and particularly, Whitmer's turned into a really good campaigner as well. And Walz, of course, has got a lot of attack surface with his COVID policies, with his cities burning, with his not being truthful about his military record and such. So they're flawed VPs. I think I'll be watching when they get together to talk. But I think they could have done better. I think they could have done worse in terms of the VP picks.
Okay, fair enough. Liam Waters asks from X, what are your thoughts about mainstream media appearing to be an advantage to the, what did he say? Oh, I can't read. I can't say that on the air. Okay. What do you think about Liam Waters' comment about the press? And he thinks that the press is leaning into the Democrats more than Republicans. There, I cleaned it up.
You're gonna have to send that to me. Let's see. Yeah. So first of all, they are leaning in. Okay. And, I scanned the news programs and, Meet the Press this past weekend. Harris has the burden of incumbency, being held accountable for things that happened during her tenure. Normally, it's the benefit of incumbency, but they were able to twist that. John Harwood, who I'd like to be really clear about, is an idiot with no real world experience. He is. The guy's, I don't think he's ever been out of between. I don't think he's ever been, west of New Jersey in his life. And I think he was that kid in kindergarten that wore a suit to kindergarten. But he said it was understandable for the Republicans to demand that Harris specify the policy details because they want to use them against her politically. You think they want to talk about policy? The Washington Post was talking about the conventions, and they want to poll people about, hey, how was the convention? And they polled people that didn't watch the conventions, but watched news reports
about the convention.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
Was it Andrew Sullivan said, I'm shocked by this new Kamala. Like, she's not new. Pandering. And then PBS, during the coverage, they're chortling saying, hey, the Republicans only have 80 days to and that makes it hard to define Harris negatively. Like, ha ha. So, I do. I mean, it's clear that the media leans left. Now, the good news is this: they're losing market. And I just want to tell my listeners, readers, and viewers, there's far better reporters on Substack than me. Okay, Sasha Stone. There's a guy named Chris Bray that writes something called Tell Me How This Ends. There's Racket News led by Matt Taibbi. There's Just the Facts with Gerald Posner. John Solomon writes. But there's some really solid journalism going on over there. And, bring yourself up out of this swamp, this morass of this media, and also observe this, that every time someone steps out of line of the DMC left talking points, all of a sudden they're a pariah far left. And it's getting pretty crowded over there. Okay, no, it is. Mark Zuckerberg's going to go over there for speaking the truth about what he was told to do. Okay,
that's true. That's true.
There's that, and of course, we have good old Fox that is, Newsmax and places like that. They clearly lean right, but they make no bones about it. Everybody knows that's what they do. You're not going to get a full story from there. Go elsewhere to pick up the full story. And when you see a video clip, before you start reposting it, get online, go see the whole video clip. That's one of the favorite techniques. So,
Well, this is a good lead. This is a good lead in then. We're recording this on August the 28th on tomorrow. Kamala Harris and her running mate sit for the first time in what should be a very friendly interview where they get to talk about policy and whatever. Let's say, and this is kind of, I'm morphing Mia Donovan's email, but it's the same spirit. What are some questions you, Richard Helppie, would ask Kamala Harris in that interview? Not CNN, but what would you ask that would be fair but still probing?
If we didn't get asked, I do want to ask. I want to give the same thing about Trump as well.
I figured we'd do both. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So if I was going to interview Kamala Harris, frankly, the first question I would ask her is, when did you know that President Biden was not cognitively capable? That, because the answer can't be he was fine until the night of the debate.
Yeah.
The answer can't be I knew it, but I covered it up. Okay. And the answer, what would another answer be? I wasn't aware when, it was so obvious. So I would like to hear her being held accountable for that. Another one, and it kind of goes back to the border, and the twisting and turns about, were you or were you not the borders are. And the contemporary record says the assignment was go find out the root causes, which is true, and go find out what's going on there that we can stem this tide right now. But I'd also go a little further. I'd say, what could we expect of a Harris presidency? Does that mean another 12 million people unvetted are going to come in and be dispersed around the country? I think it's a fair question. If you want to make it an acute angle, you say, are you going to apologize to the border agents that you accused of whipping immigrants with their horse reins? Okay. But I do think it's a fair question to say, what should we expect from you, and be specific?
Yeah.
Other things is that, you want to be law and order, and, help the audience understand why you fundraised bail for people who terrorized and destroyed our cities in 2020. Now, the smart ass cynical part of me said, and here you go. You watch right now, they're saying, oh, crime's down now than it was under Trump. And my question is, are we including the statistics for all the stuff that went down in 2020? Yeah, Trump was the president, but that was not Donald Trump doing that. That was no enforcement in Portland and Seattle, in Minneapolis, and even here, to some extent in Grand Rapids. But I do think that's an important question. And I guess the other thing I would ask is this. Look, I would probably preface it by saying, look, people are leaving California by the tens of thousands. And I'd say, which of California's laws should become law of the land, seeing how there's no policies on your website? Should we emulate California, and to what end? And I think she could make a number of cases off that.
Yeah.
That's what I would
fair.
ask.
Yeah.
I mean, but again, I would be doing a real media job, and you're not going to get that.
Yeah, before we get to Trump, Mason Griffin had a question that he put in. It's not really a question, but I'm going to paraphrase him. He said that for the last 16 years, some combination of Obama, Biden, Kamala Harris has been in the White House. Only 4 of those years, if I've got this right, 4, have been Trump. I think he's got his math wrong, but I think what he's saying is there were 2 terms of Obama, 1 of Trump, and 1 of Biden. How can you? I guess I'm going to paraphrase. How can she come in and say we need to fix everything needs to be fixed, or does she say everything's been great and stay with it and it's her, and she helped?
Yeah, well, that's the bipolar nature of the Democratic National Convention. Throw the bums out 4 more years.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're talking about the same people. So, interesting. I was watching James Carville speak, and I think James Carville is brilliant when it comes to understanding elections. The man, I've had occasion to meet with him over the years, and he is really a savant when it comes to looking at election data. And his hope is that Trump loses mightily, 70-30.
Yeah.
And he makes the following point. He says, look, in 1964, the Republicans were crushed, and they won in 68. Okay.
Yeah.
In 72, the Democrats were crushed, and they won in 76. All right. So, he really makes a compelling case there. And the other thing that he says is that when you hear nationally, Harris is up 3, he goes, it really means she's down 1. She has to win the popular vote by at least 4, is his cut on it. And again, I think the guy's brilliant in terms of this, and he's rarely wrong, and he's got great insight. I'd love to see him coach Trump. I'd like to see the question asked of James Carville: how would you run the Trump campaign?
But Trump wouldn't listen to him anyway. Well, that brings us back to the flip side. What would you ask Trump if you were sitting down with him?
My first question would be, Mr. Trump, why is it you act like a child calling other people names? How do you think that benefits you? And how do you think that benefits the people of the United States of America? And how do you think that makes you appear in the world? I mean, and then I would shut up. Like, explain to me why you've got to come up with a nasty nickname. I mean,
Right.
if I'm
Elementary
weary
school
of
stuff.
anything, it would be that. The other thing I'd ask him is this, Brian. Mr. Trump, how old will you be on your next birthday? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a real factor like this. The other thing I'd ask him would be this, Mr. Trump, what's more important to you, your personal ratings or the welfare of all Americans? And see what he does with that question. And if I was really feeling chippy that day, which is a real possibility,
Real possibility.
I would say, what color or what race do you think Kamala Harris is? Okay.
Yeah.
I would, because this guy is his own worst enemy. He's had chance after chance to act like an adult. He's had chance after chance to act like an executive. And his ability to self-destruct is like no other.
It's stunning.
It really is.
You know, this is kind of a throw-in on here as we wrap this up. Both candidates, and Trump will tell you he came up with it first because he did, but the other candidate has picked it up, and that is, seems so obvious to me, but taxes on tipping. Trump wanted to eliminate them, and then I think Harris said, "Yeah, me too. I'm going to eliminate them too." I think I don't understand it. It's still capital. It's still it's still earned income. Explain to me how that works out.
Okay, so I and by the way, nobody should take this terribly seriously, right?
Okay,
but it'd be like they got the same memo from the IRS. Hey, this notion of taxing tips. Number one, we can't find them. And number two, it costs more to get there. Then look, when it was a more cash economy, I worked in a lot of restaurants. I cooked a lot of food. I bussed a lot of tables, washed a lot of dishes. I saw people support their families on tips, and they were supposed to report them. I guarantee you it didn't happen. I worked graveyard in a coffee shop that was on a street with 5 bars. It was really busy. Okay, at night. I'm a kid bussing tables, washing dishes, and the like. And this one waitress, they were trying to get people to report their tips. And so one woman, she says, "I don't get any tips." She goes, "I'm a little old lady." Go, "They only like the cute young girls." She's got a wad of bills like that, and her apron's about falling off with all the quarters and stuff that are in it. And she's not reporting that. So I'm looking at it as capitulation to the real world. Now, of course, when it goes through a credit card, they got to have some way of tracking that and so forth. But
that's funny. That's funny.
And sending out a 1099. But yeah, taxes on tips. And here's the other thing I would encourage people that have the means to do this: tip your server in cash. All right. And it's between them and the IRS, and it takes the pressure off the restaurant operator, and it lessens the weight of bureaucracy. And what I will do most often, where the tip line comes in, I'll either draw a line through it or just put cash, and I'll give them cash. And because I've watched busboys be real quick, I make sure the server knows that there's cash in there before I leave.
Hey, there you go. This is
gone way longer. You can use on the Common Bridge, Brian.
There we go. This has gone way longer than I thought. Let's wrap it up with this particular question. This is from Charlotte Walton, who said she was going to vote for RFK. He got out of the race, supported Trump. She's not going to do that anymore. Let me just ask you a global question. Does RFK help or hurt Trump?
He hurts the DNC big time. All right, because if people listen to what he said about what the Democrats have become, about war, inflation, chronic illness, censorship, the borders, masks on toddlers, and so forth, not one person any place has attacked the substance of what RFK Jr. said. And I happened to watch the entire talk. I did not appear he was on a teleprompter. Now, I don't know much about his past. They've been bringing up a lot of stuff, trying to smear the guy, and I mean, who among us haven't chopped off a whale's head and driven it across?
Right.
But there was someone saying, like, let's prosecute this guy. Like, whatever the statute of limitations is for driving a whale head on the top of your car across state lines probably expired. But no, but seriously, I think that RFK Jr. damages the DNC because the man has spoken the truth. And again, my advice to Harris and Governor Walz would be really simple, would be have some humility. Say you want to steer a better course. You realize the Inflation Reduction Act was jet fuel for inflation. You realize you misused the social media platforms. You realize that you listened to the wrong people on COVID policies. You realize that they had the border in pretty good shape before you got ideological about it, and promise to do better. That would clear the field. It would make people go, okay, they get it, and we're going to move past the era of Trump. But this notion of and I'm going to be repetitive, like all of a sudden that this is divine providence that has brought us Kamala Harris with no votes. I mean, come on.
Yeah. All right.
What I got to end on something other than come on, Brian.
Okay, go ahead and bring us home, Rich.
Okay, all right. So listen, I just want to thank my readers, listeners, and viewers of The Common Bridge. Please tell your friends. I am not near the best resource on Substack or on other independent media. Please avail yourself of this. We have a great future if we start talking to each other, if we start staying to facts. Let's get the sound bites and the smears out of our dialogue. Let's try to solve real problems. My promise to you is I will try to be original. I will try to be well-researched. And, as long as I'm going to do this program, that's where we're going. It might be futile. But together, if we quit buying what the Democrats, the Republicans, and that established media ecosystem is selling, the faster we turn our backs on them, the faster we're going to get change.
Sounds perfect. And let me do your sign off because I love doing that. And I've never done it before. And so for The Common Bridge, this is your host, Rich Helppie, and his sidekick, Brian Kruger, signing off on The Common Bridge.
Thanks for joining us on The Common Bridge. Subscribe to The Common Bridge on Substack.com or use their Substack app where you can find more interviews, columns, videos, and nonpartisan discussions of the day. Just search for The Common Bridge. You can also find The Common Bridge on Mission Control Radio or your Radio Garden app.